Et oui, nous avons aussi besoin de nos 2 poumons maintenant pour reprendre notre souffle et accueillir notre 4e conférencier. Le 4e pilier que nous attaquons à présent, et avant notre café, nous concerne tous. La communication. Avec un paradoxe, encore un. De la communication, l'on s'accorde pour dire qu'elle doit être confiée à des gens de métier, mais elle est en même temps l'apanage de tous, puisque nul ne fonctionne en société sans communiquer, message ou image. Quel chrétien ne s'est jamais trouvé en position forcée de porte-parole de l'Église, titillé sur les questions névralgiques, celles qui font mal? Et qui alors ne se demande pas comment se prononcer pour être entendu sans interprétation abusive? Comment partir d'un non-événement, l'amour du Christ, pour créer de belles opportunités de communication? Comment éviter le prosélytisme que le pape François n'hésite pas à qualifier de pompeuse absurdité? Mr. Valero, you are coordinator and co-founder of Catholic Voices, the media training academy which began in the UK to improve the church representation in the media. You are also press officer of the Opus Dei in the UK. In 2006, you coordinated the Da Vinci Code Response Group, a team of Catholics who managed the press relations in the run-up of the film. You were press officer for the beatification of Cardinal Newman within the papal visit to Britain in 2010. The right to information is inherent to our modern society, and making the Catholic voice heard in the public arena appears as a need, or even more, as an obvious duty. Every Catholic people may efficiently contribute to this as an ambassador of Christ's messages. That's precisely your point. You train Catholic people to improve their communication skills and lose their fears of controversy, mainly in front of the media. Thank you for being here with us. The floor is yours.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to speak in English. I'm sorry I can't speak French. Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. As we've been listening to an hour and a half of speeches, maybe we can take 30 seconds off, and if you turn to your neighbor and tell him or her whether you think the media in your country is anti-Catholic, okay? Do that. Could you do that? Tell your neighbor if you think the media is anti-Catholic. Comme ci, comme ça. Okay, this will come up later, so maybe you've made up your mind. That will be good. I wanted to start from this comment that the Pope made on his trip back from World Youth Day, when he said, "Who am I to judge gay people?" When he said that, the world's media were astonished. The story was reported as a new departure, a more compassionate approach by the Pope to the issue of homosexuality. And yet, he had just quoted before the Catechism, which was published in '92 under Pope John Paul II and worked on by Ratzinger, and saying that this comment was based on the compassion we should feel for homosexual people. He was listened to. Benedict wasn't listened to. What does this tell us about talking to modern society, to a culture of autonomy? This is what I'd like to establish today. The new apologetics is a sentence that was used during the last Synod of Bishops in 1992, and the Synod of the New Evangelization. And it was new, not because the content has changed, but the context has. Pope Francis, when he was Archbishop of Buenos Aires, said in 2008 that this is a change of epoch in which things are no longer in their place. Our previous ways of explaining the world and relationships, good and bad, no longer appears to work. That which appeared normal to us, family, the church, society, and the world, will probably no longer seem that way. In the first evangelization, the message was offered for the first time. Now the message is being offered to people who think they've heard it and have rejected it. In fact, they haven't understood it. Because the frames that we're given by society tend to be negative. A major frame, for example, is that religion is a private matter and has no bearing on the public sphere of a culture and law. So that as a Christian who challenges the frame is seen as imposing or offending others. Our challenge is therefore to have that parousia that St. Paul speaks about. But we also need credibility. I was very interested to know that Proposition 17 of the Synod of Bishops last year spoke about a theology of credibility, because the credibility of the church has been really knocked, and we need to be credible as well. We need to be believed. We need to be credible in order to be believed. In this presentation, what I'd like to do is to share some of the insights we have gained from our work with Catholic Voices. This is a project that has already been mentioned. It started in 2010 to prepare the visit of Pope Benedict to the UK. And our plan was to train ordinary lay people, lay Catholics, to speak on radio and television about the things of the church, to revive the art of apologetics in the era of 24-hour news. We knew that this visit would be very controversial, that this would open a space for communication, and we wanted to be there. We wanted a project run by lay people, but blessed by the bishops. And we were inspired by Cardinal Newman, who was going to be beatified during the visit of Pope Benedict. And he said, this quote that you can read yourselves, but basically, he said that if you train lay people properly, if you give them good formation, they will be able to do all the things, and the church will change. This was not understood for 100 years, until the Vatican Council, where there in Lumen Gentium, this quote that speaks about the very vocation of the laity, that involves the sanctification of the world from within as a leaven, that we have our proper function. In the past, as I exaggerate, but you could have had the position where the church was seen as the Pope, as the successor of St. Peter, and the bishops as the successors of the apostles, and the religious and the priests as ordained ministers, and the religious as people who take vows, and then as the laity as none of the above. Who are you? I am none of the above. How exciting. And now we understood that the church was the people of God, and we had a mission, and the mission of the laity was very important, was to convert the world from within. And the mission of the clergy was to help us to do that. And so this was our proper mission, which only a year later, in 1965, Apostolic Authoritatem said the laity derive the right and duty to do the apostolate from their union with Christ the head. They are assigned to the apostolate by the Lord himself. This is not mediated by the hierarchy. This is a thing that we are asked to do from baptism. And this is repeated again in Gaudium et Spes, which came out a month later, about the laity having their distinctive role. All these documents of Vatican II, which I haven't got time to... You want more sound? Okay. All these documents of Vatican II that I haven't got time to go into in detail are very interesting to understand what lay people should do in the church. Our project worked very well. When the Pope Benedict came, we were in 100 programs of TV and radio. 3 years later, when the Pope changed from Benedict to Francis, we were in 200 programs. We had grown. We had expanded throughout the UK. We had also been asked for information to start in other countries. And by the current date, we're in those countries: UK, Ireland, Spain, Poland, Lithuania, USA, Mexico, Chile, Brazil, and lastly, Argentina. This is a Pope of my colleague Austin Ivory and myself, who started the project, telling Pope Francis about it last June when we were in Rome. So it has grown everywhere and expanded. What we have studied, and this is the insights that I want to share with you, are the neuralgic issues. which are the issues where society and the church are at odds. And these are the issues that always come up in news, and which are the issues which allow us to speak, which are whether equality legislation, gay rights and freedom of conscience, the church and politics, what role the church has to speak, social teaching of the church, which we just been hearing about, clerical sexual abuse, this scandal, AIDS, condoms, human sexuality, etc. These are common throughout the world. We started studying them in 2010 for the UK, and as the project started to be implemented in other countries, we found that the issues were very much the same. And the first thing we did, because we come from journalism, was to have a very positive approach to the media. We understand the role of the media to be the institution that asks questions from people and institutions and hold them to account. We want to hold politicians to account to know what they do with our money. We want to hold people in public service to know what they do. We want to hold the church to account. When the questions are asked from politicians, they are asked on our behalf. And so we are happy that those questions be asked because we want to know. When the questions are asked of the church, they're also asked on our behalf. So we feel positive about those questions being asked. We feel that the media have to right to ask hard questions. And that's why I asked you to think at the beginning, before I started, about this question: is the media anti-Catholic in your country? I don't know your country. I don't know Belgium. I know in the UK, and I would say that most Catholics, when you ask them this question for the first time in the UK, would say yes. But once they've had the Catholic Voices training, they say no, because they've learned to look at the media differently, which is one of the things I would like to transmit to you today. And one little experiment I usually ask them to do is to type Catholic Church in Google News to get the 5 top stories where the Catholic Church appears today in your country. And this may not work in Belgium. Now maybe you do it in this room. But I usually ask, how many of those 5 stories will be negative? How many positive? And they say, out of 5, negative will be 5, or maybe 4. And I say, that's not the case. If you do the experiment regularly, if you did it every morning as you woke up, you would find that 3 of the 5 stories would be neutral, would be just reporting what was happening. 1 would be negative, and 1 would be positive. This is a very different picture. In fact, the media would like to be neutral. They don't always achieve it. But they would like to be. And I say, of course there are hostile people in the media. I can now write down for you several very important and well-known hostile people who work in the British media. But there are also very good people in the British media. And there are hostile people in government. They're constantly passing laws we don't agree with. There are hostile people in the universities teaching things that do a lot of harm. There are hostile people in our own families. I usually say that the day that I find a journalist who is as hostile to the Catholic Church as my own sister, then I will point them out and say they are very hostile. In the meantime, I'll just say they're like everyone else. They reflect what's going on in the world. And having said that, I think we try and avoid the 3 dangers in communication, which we have found in our work in Catholic Voices. The first is to be angry, because sometimes the things can be quite offensive. The news can be quite offensive. They are reported because bad things happen. And if you're angry, then you stop communicating. Nobody listens to you. So we try and teach people never to be angry about anything that's said, but always to say things happily and use every opportunity. Neither to be defensive. If you feel you are being attacked, maybe you spend all your time defending yourself. This is also a mistake. because we should be telling our story and not spend the whole of the time we are given, which is normally very little, in the enemy's camp, denying everything that has been said about us, or even appealing to our freedom. I remember when I was talking to people organizing the World Youth Day in Madrid, and they said, we allowed the gay rights people to have gay pride last week. They should allow us to have the streets for the Pope next month. And I thought, that's not right. If your only argument is that all people should be allowed to do their own things, then you haven't explained anything. You're basically saying, I know that what I'm doing is not that good, but I should be free to do it. No, what we do is the best thing in the world, we think. I think what I do is the best thing in the world. Therefore, if that's the case, I should be able to explain it really, really attractively. That the proof at the end should be that when I finish speaking, people should say, wow, I want that. That's your challenge for communication. When you communicate, not to defend anything or to be angry about anything. And then to use every crisis, every controversy. Controversies are the windows that open. People don't, as Catholics, we don't like to speak about things when they're controversial. We like to speak about things which are nice. So sometimes we have the idea that when some headline in the newspaper, which is rather controversial, appears, we say, I will wait, and I will wait until they talk about how wonderful Mother Teresa is, and then I will speak. Well, yes, okay, you could wait. But your opportunity is that controversy. And this is the amazing thing. When the controversy arises, everyone, absolutely everyone in your office, in your family, in the world, in the media, want to know what you really think. They really want to know. You know, people aren't interested in religion. And so we say, it's not a question of surviving the storm, but of dancing in the rain. You know, that when there is a controversy, we should kneel down and give thanks to God, because this is another window of opportunity that has opened for us to speak. And I was quite amazed or happy to find this paragraph in Gaudium et Spes earlier this year. I hadn't seen it before, which says that the Church admits that she has greatly profited and still profits from the antagonism of those who oppose or who persecute her. So now I feel much more positive about this, because this has always been the case from the early persecutions when the martyrs lost their lives, but the Church spread throughout the world, to now, to today, that this is the way things work. And yes, the news is framed usually in a negative way. The frames of current culture like to have two opposites. You know, large, nasty institutions versus nice victims. Corporate interest versus public good. People living in the present versus people living in the past. Now, etc. Now look at those 5 frames and think, in which side does the Church get put normally of the equation of these frames? Well, it's seen as a big, nasty institution with a corporate interest, living in the past, ruled by dogma, and run by tradition. So that's the beginning. And so our communication is to understand what's happening. What is the culture saying about these topics? So that we can answer. And to understand this well, so that we can come out of the frame that we are given and be listened to. And this is what we call reframing in our method of communication of Catholic Voices. And when I sent, I gave this presentation, and I sent our book to a friend of mine, and he sent me an email where he said this. And this, I think, is the most important thing that I'm going to say today in this presentation, which is that behind the criticisms that are made of the Church, there is always a positive intention. There is also a value, which is a Christian value, which we not only agree with, but actually promote. And when you know that, this is truly liberating, because you realize you want the same thing. And this guy told me, for years, he was a civil servant working in government, and he said, for years I used to not tell anyone I was Catholic, because if I did, they would always ask me these difficult questions. I didn't know the answer, and they always seemed so negative. But after reading that book, the next day I went in, I told everyone I was Catholic, because I realized that we all want the same thing. And for him, it was a true liberation to know that we all wanted the same thing. And so, for example, when people say the Vatican should sell all its riches and give the money to the poor, there is an appeal to a value of solidarity, of charity, of justice, which we not only agree with, but actually promote. The Catholic Church is the most charitable institution in the world. When people say, I'm scandalized because the Catholic Church is guilty of millions of deaths in Africa because it doesn't allow them to use condoms. I heard this appeared in the BBC television last week, again, for the millionth time. The Catholic Church is guilty of millions of deaths because it doesn't allow people to use condoms in Africa. What is the value being appealed to there? Life. The value of life is more important than dogma. I mean, what is the most pro-life organization in the world? The Catholic Church. So basically there's a huge connection there of the values that inspire us and the culture, because our cultures are Christian. And this works in the media too. And so we say that our task is to reframe, locate the existing frame, understand what the culture is saying about the situation, find the positive value behind the criticism, the positive intention, agree with that value, and start our response from there so that you can come out of the frame and you can be listened to. And here's the thing. On the one hand, if it's a controversy, everybody is interested in what you have to say. On the other hand, when you reframe, they listen, because otherwise they wouldn't listen. If you get angry or defensive or you reinforce the frame, they don't listen. So there are some workshops this afternoon and tomorrow where I will teach people how to reframe in practice. I haven't got time now to teach you, but it's a method which is really, really important for our communication as Catholics in the media and in life in general. I was, again, given this talk to a group of schoolboys, and one 18-year-old wrote me this email later when I had gone back to my office. I went to a Mary Stopes protest one. Mary Stopes is an abortion facility in England. And he said he realized whilst I was there that there is actually something in common between us and the nurses and staff running the clinics. We all wanted to help the poor, vulnerable women who were pregnant and confused about what to do. And I thought, wow, that is a very amazing thought. That's an amazing thought that we can start from, that these people doing these horrible things actually want something good. We want something good. We have a point of departure for our communication. We see our work in communication as providing light, not heat. That's our motto. We provide light, we explain, we don't battle. We try to use simple words to explain what we have to do, because now most people don't understand religious language. Another saying we have is witnessing, not winning. When we communicate on television, we're giving a witness of who we are. We're not going there to win battles. So we don't see the other side as the enemy, and we always try and couch the message as a positive message. Sorry, I passed that too quickly. Saying a yes to women, to life, to love, to freedom. These values that are the positive values behind the criticisms that we will find. And we're always compassionate, because to be Catholic is to be compassionate. So if you're Catholic in your normal life, but you're not compassionate when you speak on television, then you're not really Catholic there. And we find with this, and then of course we have to be well prepared, and with lots of formation, good formation, information, and working out our method. The 10 principles of communication we have in this book here, which my colleague has written, called How to Defend the Faith Without Raising Your Voice. Right? So that's the main thing, is how to defend the faith without raising your voice. But in a way, it's even more than that. It's how to defend the faith so that people listen to you. And we have, as I say, have this experience of now 4 years in many countries where suddenly people are speaking on television and radio, and people are listening. And that's a new, fantastic state of affairs. So the 10 principles are there, explained in the book. But now I'd like to summarize this in 3 slides, because we're a bit late. And this is a summary of what I've been saying. One is 3 problems. One is nobody's listening. Well, we need to learn to live in the controversy. When there is a controversy, we need to learn that this is the place we want to be speaking. We're happy there. We're happy to be in the place of controversy. If we are happy, then we will be able to communicate very well. And the way that we say something new that people are interested is to reframe, is to come out of the frame. The frame, those negative frames that they give us, we find the positive behind the frame, and we come out of the frame, and people then listen to us. That's the first problem we want to overcome. Nobody's listening. The second point is similar, that the religious voice is excluded from public debates, and we need to make the case for public faith, or the public case for faith, that our position is legitimate, is credible, and it contributes a lot to the public sphere. So we use the language of the common good. We know a lot about Catholic social teaching, as we've been hearing about now. We know that all the movements, the civil rights movements, the liberation of slaves movements, the emancipation of women movements, they all come from Christianity. We are happy with that. We know where they come from. We know the information. And finally, we have to speak, and this was the title of the talk, to a culture dominated by the ethic of autonomy and the idol of equality. We have a very wide moral matrix where many things are important, not just our autonomy, but community, our families, our churches, God, the poor. Now, we have to show the narrowness of the ethic of autonomy and show how our moral matrix is much bigger and explains much more of society. Pope Francis does this. He speaks very well to people, and he's teaching perennial doctrines of the Church in a new way, and people are actually listening. He understands that what is said is not always heard, and sometimes you have to start somewhere else. And we have to discover where. And in Catholic Voices, we have also learned that, where to start. Thank you.